Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Richard Peppy. This video is going to be the first of a number of videos focused on venture capital in New England, Boston, and it has a perspective. I have a point of view, and I'm going to try to argue the point of view to you. The argument is that Boston and New York, rather than seeing themselves as competitors in the venture capital game, should see themselves as cooperative and join forces to make a more efficient and wealthy region become even more successful. We have all heard, if you follow this game at all, that Boston has been eclipsed by Silicon Valley, and that, of course, is true. But let's keep this in perspective. The fact that Boston has been eclipsed, that Silicon Valley has not only eclipsed Boston, but has eclipsed the rest of the planet in venture capital and high-tech investments as far as computers and associated investments are concerned, doesn't mean that Boston's done a poor job. And it's important to keep that in mind, because I think that there are possibilities to join Boston and New York capital in a new venture capital arrangement and to select areas of investment such as robots, batteries, maybe healthcare and associated products relating to healthcare, where Boston and New York have great strengths, and it would be possible to look for specific investments in this specific area. Now, this first video is going to be kind of a broad outline of where we are today. As I say, it's been part of the backdrop of the conversation about Boston and venture capital. See it as kind of a stick in the mud failure. Nothing could be further from the truth. On a per capita basis, I suspect Boston is still the #1 medical city on the planet. That's not only in delivering medical services, but in research and in manufacturing and in developing healthcare initiatives and healthcare technology. There's a kind of a famous article that's been written by a woman whose name escapes me, who is now a dean and professor in one of the business schools on the West Coast, that tracks Boston's failure, as she seems to see it, to a kind of a hierarchical structure in the Boston business or engineering or technological landscape. But if you dig down and see and get away from the computer arena, what's amazing about Boston is how good it still is. And there's a reason for that. The reason is, if you took what everybody would concede the 100 best universities in the country, 15 or 20 of them, by anybody's imagination, anybody's analysis, would be within driving distance of 128. So New England, southern New England, has 3% of the population of the country and 15 or 20% of the really outstanding colleges. That makes a difference. Well, because there have been studies on what happens to these graduates, and a lot of these graduates, particularly if they're in the high-tech area, stick around and work in that area. Now, let me talk to you first from an overview of venture capital through an article that appeared in City Lab entitled "Venture Capital Remains Highly Concentrated in Just a Few Cities." This article kind of highlights the point that I'm going to make and refer to in this video and further videos. When it comes to high-tech startups, it begins, we hear a lot about the so-called, quote, rise of the rest. As the nation's leading centers of high-tech industry, places like the San Francisco Bay Area, New York City, Boston, and Seattle have become increasingly expensive to live in, no question. No question. The argument goes, talented techies, entrepreneurs, and startups are moving to less expensive places like Portland, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Nashville, Las Vegas, and others. But then the article asks, but to what extent is this actually the case? To get at this with the help of my, quote, Martin Prosperity Institute colleagues, I decided to take a look at the most recent data on where high-tech startups actually are. And they discuss their methodology. And they make the statement, venture capital investments provide perhaps the best gauge of the actual economic value of high-tech startup activity in a given place, as it indicates how highly these startups are valued by the market. That's the key, the market. Not an analysis by a professor or a talking head on Fox News or CNN, but the market. They organize and analyze the data. The key takeaway, the geography of high-tech startups remains extremely concentrated and unequal, with the Bay Area and the Boston, New York, Washington corridor accounting for roughly 2/3 of all venture capital investments across the United States. Now, it presents a list. Venture capital investments, share of the U.S. total. 34% are in the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward, California area. New York, Newark, New Jersey City has 11%. San Jose, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara has 9%, 9.8%. And Boston, Cambridge, Newton, and Manchester, New Hampshire has just practically the same number, 9.79%. Now, if you add the New York area and the Boston area, you come up with roughly 20%. That's 1/5 of the entire venture capital investment of the U.S. I claim that there's a space here for Boston and New York venture capitalists, investors, maybe income, wealthy people, funds, to get together and see whether or not they can't drive a given technology in areas that we know are going to advance in the next 10 to 15 years. As I say at the beginning, robots, batteries, certain healthcare products as people get older. This is going to be a very fat area. And Boston and New York each have strengths in this area. Excuse me. And if you put money into it now, it might seem a long shot, but look how much better off you are to be in this narrow geographical area than anywhere else in the country. All right. And after that, after Boston, you have Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Ana, that's 7%. Then after that, it goes down to San Diego, 2%, Seattle, 2%, Miami, 1.89%, Chicago, 1.82%. I mean, it's really surprising once you get out of these top 4 or 5 locales, how poorly everyone else is doing. Even Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington. We've all heard that Dallas is going to become a great venture capital area. It doesn't even have 1% of the national investment total. Denver, 0.73, 3/4 of 1%. Boulder. What kind of surprised me was Durham Chapel Hill. That's the so-called Golden Triangle. 1/2 of 1%, 351 million. Compare that with Boston, 6 billion. The article goes on, there were very few surprises among the rest of the top 20. Aspiring tech hubs like Nashville ranked 22, Portland ranked 23, Pittsburgh 28th, Detroit 37th, Las Vegas, so forth. These places took in 100 to 300 million each, which may be good compared to the past, but still less than 0.5 point of the 0.5% of the national total each. Big dots, they show a plan with a map rather, with dots signifying the area of investment. And the dot, obviously, in Northern California is immense. And the dot in the Boston, New York area is immense. But there were dots in places across the country we did not see before. So there was some, I'm not trying to say that there's no activity outside these 2 or 3 main areas, 3 or 4 main areas. But it concludes on a pound-for-pound basis. There are small areas that, on a per capita basis, have impressive numbers, but they don't rise to what we have in Boston and New York, or obviously in Northern California. On a per capita basis, they mention Manchester, New Hampshire as having a presence. Well, I would include Manchester, New Hampshire with the Boston area. Now, what gave me the idea for this combining Boston and New York venture capital, is that I've read about a plan, if it's could be considered to be a plan at this stage, of combining Sacramento and Silicon Valley. I gather Sacramento, I'm not that familiar with it, but I gather Sacramento is about 120 miles away from the heart of Silicon Valley. And there's been a couple articles you can find on the internet that discuss why this might be a good idea on the West Coast. But the focus of this combination between Silicon Valley and Sacramento really has a different look about it. As I understand it, they are trying to integrate the workforces maybe of Sacramento and Silicon Valley. Now, a couple of statistics kind of surprise you. That obviously, the most important ingredient in high-tech and ventures, which venture capital supports, is talent. And millennium talent is very important given the demographics of where we are with engineering cohorts. Where is it here? Something like 40% of the millennium's engineering or tech workers in Silicon Valley would like to leave the area. And I don't know why. I gather that expensive housing is a big part of it, and these are people, young men and women, who I guess would like to, naturally enough, begin forming family units and buying real estate, which I gather is just incredible and all but impossible in the heart of Silicon Valley. So the plan is to kind of change the focus from Silicon Valley to Sacramento and bring some work there that would otherwise leave for Utah or Las Vegas or Seattle, the Northwest. That may not be a bad idea, but we really couldn't, I don't think the same factors would work in New York, Boston. Number one, again, as I said, I think that Sacramento is about 120 miles from the heart of Silicon Valley. Obviously, Boston and New York more than that. And it's really prohibitive to imagine a commute, although maybe Connecticut would be a place that would be attractive. Rhode Island, I've been receiving messages from a Rhode Island venture capital operation, and so they're getting in it. So it's not beyond the realm of the possible. The possible. But this idea that Boston and New York have certain advantages that they really should see as advantages that should be promoted and leveraged. And my videos are going to be focused around how would it work? Where would people meet? Who would be interested in investing? What would be the best legal structure? What would be the best legal structure for the venture capital investing vehicle? What would be the best legal structure for the, if you will, companies that would like to have an investment from the venture capital organization? What would the accounting problems be? What would the investing problems be? What would the overall meeting and organizational problems be? It's going to be an interesting discussion. If you enjoy this video, if you're interested in the subject, please give me a like and give me a share. Thank you. Appreciate it.